I love machinery that works. I hate piles of rust.
I had the big shop.
But you do get attached to it, but you know it's right to let it free. This is reincarnation for the 1218. Not many times do you get a chance at a second life that's going to run. So it's exciting, but it's also sad. I'm losing a friend.
They built these engines here in Roanoke. We all practically grew up as it's built back in the 40s. A lot of our relatives worked on them, you know, worked in the East End shops and built them, see?
I'm delighted that we were able to take it down to Birmingham to have a look to see whether it is practical to rehabilitate this for use. I'm not sure it is, but we're going to do everything we can to find out whether it can.
You just start taking it apart. That's what you do. You start taking it apart, and the further you go into it, the more you find wrong. Everything you take apart, you measure it, you check it against the drawing if you have one. Some problems, you look at them at first, the thing is ruined. But you look at it a while, and then you get somebody else to look at it, you know? And everybody will have a different slant on it, and pretty soon somebody will suggest something. You'll either say, well, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard, or let's try it, you know?
Since I came to work up here in February, I have made countless number of parts. I can't begin to tell you how many, you know, different kinds of parts, and every day is something different.
There's guys here that work 5 days a week in this place, and they go home to Chattanooga or Atlanta, and they work with those steam engines all week. It's like in their blood.
A steam giant is reborn. Norfolk & Western's Class A number 1218 is back on the high iron after a quarter century of silence. A tribute to veterans of the steam age, to those who keep steam alive today, and to railroad buffs from around the world. Between 1936 and 1959, Norfolk & Western built 43 of its all-purpose Class A design in its Roanoke, Virginia shops. With more than 6,000 horsepower and 114,000 pounds of tractive effort, the A's could handle anything.
In World War II, it was used on handling troop trains mostly, and some of the passenger trains got too heavy for the Class K to handle. So it was a combination fast freight, passenger, and general purpose locomotive. And it still was the bread and butter locomotive that handled our heavy coal drive.
Number 1218 was built in 1943 and assigned to time freights out of Portsmouth, Ohio, operating on passenger-like schedules. She was retired in '59, the only A to survive scrapping in the transition to diesel. The locomotive was sold as a steam generator, but eventually found a home as a static display in the Virginia Museum of Transportation. Norfolk Southern Corporation restored number 1218 and placed her in excursion service in 1987. 75,000 people ride behind number 1218 and other excursion locomotives every year.
It feels just, there's no words in the dictionary that can explain riding a steam engine. It does something to you that nothing else does.
I've been married to a train buff for a long time now, and I've done a lot of this kind of stuff. We've come from California. We drove all the way back here. We've come 5,000 miles to do this.
Grand Trunk Western Pacific.
Okay, gentlemen, you better get aboard right here. They're going to pull. All aboard.
I'm riding so I can enjoy the 1218, the Norfolk Southern steam. It's the joy of life, completeness. As I just commented to a friend, when I die and go to heaven, I suspect I'll be riding the steam train, and I won't mind shoveling coal if I have to do it all the time. If I have to go to hell, I'll still shovel coal and still ride steam.
No, it's just, we're just nuts. Just like to play train once in a while.
You don't even think that you're being pulled by steam as far as, a jolting feeling or anything. It rides smooth. I enjoy the scenery, and the people are so kind. I notice everybody's almost childlike. They get animated about the train. They love it. I see my father turn into a child overnight when he gets on these trains.
In a way, we are creating a part of history with these trains. The use of a steam locomotive, which is something out of the past, and the types of cars that we've preserved give people now an opportunity to do something that many of them never had a chance to do in the years of the steam train and just multitudes of passenger trains that crossed this country.
There's something special about a steam locomotive that nothing else will match. Just to hear the sound of that whistle, fantastic. We didn't think much about steam locomotives when they ran by the house. Now they're all gone.
That lonesome whistle brings them right out of the woodwork, or out of bed, or down from the hills.
Some stuff I got. I'm gonna get over here, get a guy from the distance. I get a whole bunch of the train instead of just right up on him. Whatever you want.
All along the way, number 1218's friends greet her.
Smoke. See the black smoke? You have to close when he comes up here, because the cinders might get in your eyes after he gets up here. See if you blow the whistle. No, you don't have to yet, Elena. No, you don't have to, darling. You see it? Yeah. Isn't that fun? Yeah. I want to get in it. You want to get in it? Yeah.
Hang on. Got it.
The locomotive attracts both parents and their children.
Well, when I take my kids over to see the A, they're just sort of mystified by it. It's just such a massive thing, and a child is just so fragile in comparison to it. It's a very charismatic thing.
Tennessee, Tennessee has been
In some communities, number 1218's arrival is a good cause for a celebration.
And they gave him his orders in Monroe, Virginia, saying, Pete, you are way behind time. This is not 98, but it's 97, and we got this.
Did you get out for both the run bys?
Yes. Yeah.
Any luck?
Oh, the first one was pretty good. The second one was a bit too close. But,
you always get that little bit of creeping forward. Just one guy takes one pace forward, and that just blows it. Yeah. You know, I was trying to get a shot, you know, one forward and one back, and the second one, that was a hard one. You know, a head bobbed up just at the wrong moment. You know. Oh well. When you've got 1,000 heads to choose from, one of them's bound to be in the way.
Along the route, retired steam railroaders remember.
Well, it always made you feel good to get up on one of them and know that it was a challenge. Just to what you could do with that engine. How you could fire it, how you could keep steam, you readjust it, and the people along that right away would look at you as though, man, I'd like to have his job. That sure is a job of prestige. I used to come in the passenger station when I was firing passenger, and my cousin was sitting there, and she said, I didn't know you was such an important man. I was nothing but a fireman.
We come around them curves there at Higby, and he really wanted to show me what to do, man. He skinned her back. And, I mean, we went by Sally's. I don't think Sally even knew we went by there. But the speedometer showed 92 miles an hour. Like you said there, you asked me if I was scared, but I did. I wanted to go just as fast as it'd go because I felt safe with that engineer.
Railroad wives remember too.
I still think of my husband anytime I hear a train whistle because he lived railroading his entire life. And I think more so after he retired than before. And he talked railroading about 18 hours a day. I don't think he slept much more than 6 hours. He's afraid he'd miss something and talking about railroading.
Today's steam enthusiasts come from everywhere and in all varieties.
Massachusetts. I think the train run is very fun.
Oh, my husband and I are rail buffs. We're from Connecticut.
My name is John C. Hamill. I'm from Northern Virginia, Fairfax Station.
Well, my name's David Potter and I'm from Sydney, Australia.
My name's Eric Cooper. I come from a little city called Alloa in Scotland. It's right in the middle of Scotland.
Where's West Virginia? Or what state are we in?
Ohio.
Most keep busy.
Look, I'm busy at the moment. I'd rather take interest in this.
Some are camera shy.
I'll be indicted. I don't want to be on television.
But a steam excursion with number 1218 is not the place to avoid cameras.
more normal, more realistic.
One excursion holds historic promise. It features number 1218 paired with Class J number 611, a restored Norfolk and Western steam passenger locomotive. A photo session is arranged the night before.
Get your cable release.
The next morning,
Well, I'll tell you, I've never in my life thought that I would ever see two trains, two steamers, neck and neck, fighting upgrade and downgrade. And I wet my pants 15 times today. The most magnificent sight I ever laid eyes on. 1218 and 611. I've ridden behind both separately, but never together. And this is what it's all about, folks. Norfolk Southern steam specials. The power of S squared, which means the power of steam doubled.
and so a piece of history comes back to life. Class A number 1218, a monument in steel to those who designed and built her, and who maintained and operated her. She belongs not just in the past, but in the present and future, with those for whom smoke and cinders are a way of life. She belongs to the steam people.
I think it was built to run forever with a little maintenance.
On across the fields, I can hear her gentle song, reaching for me through years so long. I can feel the rumbling as that train comes into sight. I can hear the whistle blowing. Can't you see the smoke arising?
Six 11's gonna move. It's pretty smooth.
She's been silent for nearly a quarter of a century, her splendid voice stilled by progress. But in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, where this graceful giant was born, they still remember.
Jay being alive, of course, is the greatest joy that we true rail fans have had in many, many years.
Well, it was so pretty. It just kept me in awe to looking at it. And then to think of getting to run it, it really did do something for a fella.
Now, this streamlined thoroughbred is running free and proud once again. Her old friends in the Blue Ridge have waited a long time to hear her familiar call, and the wait is nearly over. Number 611 is going home.
Everything was perfect. N&W, they built them good.
Norfolk and Western designed and built its own steam locomotives at its headquarters in Roanoke, Virginia. Although the railway built its reputation as a coal carrier, its most famous locomotive design remains the sleek simplicity chosen for a class of passenger engines known simply as the J, the most powerful 484 Northern design steam locomotives ever built. Between 1941 and 1950, Norfolk and Western built 14 of these racehorses, beginning with number 600. Right from the start, they were a special breed. They were, quite simply, the ultimate in steam design. The Jays pulled America's last fine steam train, the Powhatan Arrow, daily between Norfolk, Virginia and Cincinnati, Ohio, with each locomotive often rolling up 15,000 miles a month with a minimum of maintenance.
Mr. Walker was a road foreman, and when that 600 came out of the East End shop, all the engineers was nervous about getting the runner. And he told them finally, he said, well, boy, just go on out there and run her like you run all the rest of them.
Steam engines changed the face of this nation and then vanished. But for more than a century, those tireless workhorses were such a familiar sight that the design of a railroad's locomotives often became its identifying trademark. But even a J couldn't outrun progress.
The roundhouse foreman told me, said, this is the last trip it'll be used. You'll bring it back. Well, when we got to Bluefield then, they cut the 611 off, and that's the last passenger train they'd ever run on. Well, I hate to see it go, because we love those engines.
Number 611 escaped the fate of her 13 sisters. Instead of falling victim to the cutting torch and the scrap heap, she took a place of honor in the Roanoke Transportation Museum. She sat and silently waited. 22 years later, her wait ended.
When the decision was made to restore the 611, I was fortunate enough to cover the story when the engine was towed out of the Roanoke Transportation Museum. That was especially fortunate for me because, in addition to being a journalist, I've been a rail fan myself for a number of years. I remember it was a beautiful October morning when they began the activities to tow the engine out of the museum. About 200 people were on hand. There was one man there from Colorado. I believe another one had driven all night from Florida just to be there. And then the thing that I remember most prominently when they actually began the towing was the sound that the engine made, of the big pistons drawing air in and out through the cylinders. It sounded just like a person gasping for breath. And really, if you think about it, that's what the locomotive itself was doing. And of course, the tracks just creaked under the weight of the thing. And when they actually began to pull it out of the museum grounds, a lot of the people that were there seemed to be just mesmerized by what was happening, and they began to follow along behind the engine, almost as if it was some kind of gigantic Pied Piper, and these grown men and women were just little children.
In Birmingham, Alabama, Southern Railway operates the nation's only remaining full-time steam locomotive facility. And it is fitting that 611 has come here to be reborn. In the 1940s, Norfolk and Western and Southern jointly operated passenger trains over their rails, and these crack streamlined trains were often pulled by the power of J-class locomotives. Now, the two giant railways have consolidated to form the Norfolk Southern Corporation, one of the nation's largest and most modern railways. And the rebirth of the J is one of the first examples of the spirit of cooperation that exists between these two great partners.
Some of these threads are left-hand on these water column parts, so that looks like a left-hand thread to me. So Just put it right on there and pull it back that way. Now watch and see if this comes or if the nut moves. I can't tell.
I wanted to show you the damage we found to this hot water pump here. Fellas got it off the engine and got it cleaned up. We've got a crack right in here.
That's almost impossible to weld.
Runs around right into the cylinder.
We can use it for parts.
Yes,
the problem
we can.
is going to be finding another pump. That's the whole problem.
Well, there's a few other engines in the Roanoke Museum. They might have this size. I know they have the same type of equipment.
This will all have to be sandblasted.
When this hole welded up.
We take that thing off, change all this equipment. Of course, we're going to have to drain these boxes and be sure that they're clean and the plugs and all are tight and all that sort of thing.
Sure.
We're going to have to run electrical connections back here now because we're going to have this red light on the back. And we can just run it through from the engine through here, put a red light on the back of the trailer tank and a red light on the back of this in case we ever run the engine
You could
without
run
the
a
trailer tank.
conduit underneath the fender.
Right, yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea.
I expect to find a lot of water and rust, pitted bearings and everything. Amazing how condition they was in when they found that.
Where they wore excessively right along in here is where the engine works most of the time.
Where you cut off comes.
That's right. Get it out so the machinist can get a figure on it. Seats look pretty good.
On August 14, 1982, number 611 moved under steam for the first time in 22 years. "10 miles down the track, she stopped.
Even at that, we should have gotten some oil. Then we'll screw that out and determine if that hole is open.
A mechanical lubricator wasn't oiling properly. It was a minor problem quickly solved, and the only one encountered. After that, she ran so smoothly that the scheduled 10-hour test trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee was completed in 5 hours.
All the sweat and blood and everything else, it was worth it. It was worth it after 10 minutes in that left-hand seat. The most fun I've had in 6 months of working down here. Running to Chattanooga and back.
And the next day, she turned in a flawless run back to Birmingham.
For all intent and purposes, she's the same locomotive now as she would have been coming out of the NOW shop.
It was built to do it, and it still can do it. I think all the men here deserve a lot of credit. They did a fine job. I think it's a super engine. In my opinion, it is the best steam locomotive running in the North American continent today.
I think it'd be just like yesterday. I think it'd be a little different. Reaching up and cutting the old water plumb on.
Pull the throttle, you'd hear the intermittent puffs of the exhaust. The fire would brighten up, smoke and steam would come from the staff. And that's where the real romance of railroading is, in a steam locomotive.
1 week after her test run, the J begins the final leg of her journey home. Behind her lies a reminder of her past glories. A sleek, streamlined train filled with excited passengers. Ahead of her, crowds of people, many of whom have never seen a steam train, wait to wish her well.
People used to flock from hundreds of miles away, outlying points, just to make a short trip to ride the train and look at it and go back through to the diner and have a meal.
And in the Blue Ridge, her old friends remember.
It was the greatest passenger engine ever made. Today, I would say it would be sort of like the Columbia going up and flying around. That's the greatest thing in space, and we always felt like that the J was the greatest thing we could run on the railroad.
But there's a fire plug right dead center, and I've had them told them to get the fire hose set down there. All right.
On the Norfolk Division, that's west of Norfolk, it got up to a speed of 110 miles an hour with a 15-car, 1,025-ton train. That is remarkable performance for any locomotive.
Well, we come out of Lick Fork one night. He walked down, his little boy standing there. He said, "Son, has that pretty train went by yet?" He's talking about the Powhatan there.
They were good riding engines.
Yeah.
There was never engine built that rode any easier than they did.
The J engine was a sweet running engine, no question about it. And with teamwork, as I said, you work together, you could pull a lot of cars, and you could handle a smooth train.
A steam engine is like a human being. It's not like a streetcar.
No.
It's what you can get out of it. Now, somebody might be able to get more out of you than I could. You see what I mean? Persuasion and so forth and so on. Well, the same thing goes for a steam engine.
Yes.
And you listen to the exhaust and watch the coal you consume and the water she's taking in. There's something up here that is hard to explain. It takes place to become an engineer.
Well, running a steam engine is a full-time business. There's no time for conversation.
There's an art to running the steam engine now. And you think you're doing all it's going to do. And you can get to fool with it, and you can make it do more.
And they'd even get in the roads that run right beside the track and just go with you and try to race you and get you to race them. Oh, it was great. But we come down to Jug Neck, and saw all those beautiful mountains. And I looked over at my fireman and I says, Pat, just think, they're paying us to do this.
On time today. We have arrived. Oh, she ran like a clock. If we'd had as many people as this come into the station in the days we ran passenger trains, we'd still be running them. Great crowd. Well, good afternoon, fellow Roanokeers, fellow railroaders, and fellow rail enthusiasts. I'm going to introduce to you an old citizen of Roanoke. Roanoke born, Roanoke bred, and Roanoke proud. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you N&W's Class J number 611.
Man's creations have captured the imagination and spirit of so many people in a way that the steam locomotive has. They write songs about them, follow them in daredevil pursuits, and invest them with human qualities. And why, we wonder? Is it a living link with history, a nostalgic reminder of an era almost forgotten, a rekindling of the fires of our youth? Perhaps. Perhaps it is that complex. Or maybe it is something infinitely more simple and meaningful.
Well, I used to think that number 4 coming out of Williamson with 15 cars, with the lights burning in the coaches and the baggage car. It was the prettiest train I ever saw.
Moved by steam, out of the Blue Ridge Mountains came a streamlined machine built by Virginia craftsmen back in 1950. She was numbered 611. She's the finest in steam. She's the pride of the N&W, and she rolls again today. She's the finest steam train ever built, the 611 Class J. She served the road with pride until that mournful day when the diesel came to Roanoke and they put the J away. Yeah, they retired her back in 60, but Norfolk Southern got her running again. Under steam she came to Roanoke, say welcome home, old friend. She's the pride of the N&W, and she rolls again today. She's the finest steam train ever built, the 611 Class J. She's the pride of the N&W, Philadelphia, and she rolls again today. But she's the finest steam train ever built, the 611 Class J.
This is the Storen coal-burning steam locomotive of its low first cost, its availability, its economical operation, and its versatility. Over this 2,154 miles of track, largely in mountainous territory, with a main line crossing both the Allegheny and Blue Ridge mountain ranges, roll modern coal-burning steam locomotives, the power selected and used by the Norfolk and Western panel trains of all types. Steam locomotives, some of the largest and most modern, are developed and built by the railroad's mechanical employees in the Roanoke, Virginia shops. This type of streamliner handles all principal passenger trains. Let us look back and briefly review its construction. First, we look in the shop's foundry. Starting from scratch, we see scrap steel being charged into an electric furnace. The heat is melted, refined, and tapped into a ladle. An overhead crane moves the ladle to the floor where a prepared mold is poured. After proper cooling, the mold is opened, and here we see the casting, a driving wheel in the rough. After the grinding and machining, we next see the wheel and its mate mounted on the axle with the tires applied. All driving wheel axles of 116 of the road's modern locomotives are fitted with roller bearings. In addition to the driving journals, this class locomotive has roller bearings on all crank pins, crosshead pins, valve gear pins, and the journals of the engine truck, trailing truck, and tender truck wheels. The roller bearing application, plus cast steel engine bed and complete mechanical and pressure lubrication, results in dependable performance, high availability, and its cost. From these steel billets, the rods are manufactured. One has been heated to the correct temperature. Now, watch the die forging process on the 8,000-pound steam hammer. The alloy, together with carefully planned and executed forging and heat treatment, results in a finished product with an average yield strength. The rods are next machined, polished, and plated. Boiler plates of the proper thickness and size are being fabricated for the boiler. They are sized and drilled, then are run through the rolls which form them to the proper shape for boiler shell courses. Following the rolling, the courses are placed in a normalizing furnace to relieve all internal stresses. The courses are sandblasted to remove the scale. Next, the shell courses are fitted together prior to riveting the seams. For the heavy riveting involved, no hand job will suffice, so the shell is picked up and placed on end in the so-called bull riveter. The ram of this machine is activated with hydraulic pressure and is carefully controlled between narrow limits to ensure the proper driving pressure. The fabrication of the all-welded firebox is being completed. It is placed in position in the boiler. 4,400 stay bolts are required to attach it to the outside shell or wrapper sheets. The application of the stay bolts, together with the flues, completes the boiler. It is moved to the erecting shop, where it is placed on and attached to the engine bed. There, overhead cranes lift the boiler and engine bed as a unit and move it in position over the driving and truck wheels. The clearance between the axle housing and the engine bed pedestals is only 12 thousandths of an inch, which explains the extreme care being taken in lowering the engine to working position on the wheels. Completed, our new baby, engine 602, rolls out of the shop on her way to the roundhouse for service. She will pull the Pocahontas and the Cavalier crack passenger trains between Norfolk, Virginia, and Cincinnati and Columbus, Ohio. Between Lynchburg and Bristol, Virginia, she will handle the New York, New Orleans Limited, the Birmingham Special, and the Tennessean trains. Let's follow her for one trip. The engine crew arrives and compares time. The time comparison is a familiar scene, but missing is the engineer's oil can. No, the modern steam locomotive does not depend on hand oiling for its lubrication. The engineer is supplied with neither grease nor oil. The throttle is open, and she moves smoothly away from Roanoke, pulling the westbound Cavalier. 100 miles, and she arrives at Bluefield, West Virginia. While standing for the station stop, the water supply in the tender will be replenished. Leaving Bluefield, she quickly enters the coal fields. Through this beautiful, rugged country, with her 27 by 32-inch cylinders and 275 pounds boiler pressure, developing over 5,000 cylinder horsepower, she pulls as many as 12 cars over long grades as steep as 2%. We pass a typical modern coal mining operation. Williamson, West Virginia, 200 miles from Roanoke and still in the mountains. The stop is only long enough to discharge and take on passengers and change crews. 260 miles, and we stop at a roadway coaling and watering station. Here at one spotting, the tender's coal space and water space will be refilled. At Canova, here Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia join, and these states give Canova its name. Now we leave the mountains of West Virginia and cross the Ohio River into Ohio. Along the Ohio River Valley, she speeds westward. With her 70-inch drivers, she was designed primarily to handle heavy trains over mountain grades. But when grades and curvature permit, she will run. How fast? Well, let's get on and see. On level track, she is flashing over the rails at 100 miles per hour. Portsmouth Freight Classification Yard and a portion of the hump where cars are motion weighed and classified by gravity. Portsmouth, Ohio, and she's made 312 miles since dispatchment from Roanoke and still requires no servicing. Crews are changed, and we're ready for the last lap of 112 miles. Pulling into the station at Cincinnati, she completes a one-way trip of 424 miles and takes a breathing spell for one reason only. She has reached the end of the line, Cincinnati, the western terminus of the railroad. The modern steam locomotive with all the refinements, represents a relatively low initial cost or investment with corresponding low carrying charges. It is dependable in operation. It requires no specially trained men for its operation or maintenance. It utilizes the existing servicing and repair facilities. It requires no line of road repairs or supervision, and generally speaking, is available to the extent the operating train schedules permit. Our engine has had the fire cleaned, the tender filled with water, and the lubrication is now in progress. While the away-from-home terminal servicing will be completed in less than 1 hour, she must stand by 2 hours, awaiting the next schedule for the return trip to Roanoke, handling the eastbound Pocahontas. During the late hours of night, she has swiftly retraced her way back east, and now in the early morning is rapidly approaching Roanoke. Roanoke, and home again. She is cut off and moves to the roundhouse for servicing. The Schaefer's Crossing Engine Terminal at Roanoke was built to handle a dispatchment of 80 locomotives per day. With a wartime load of 140 per day, consisting mostly of large, heavy articulated engines, the one roundhouse and one turntable proved adequate only because the engines are of modern construction. Remember this arrival time at the engine terminal, 11:1. This engine will move at the regular routine pace with no special moves or shortcuts. The first operation is on the ash pit, where the grates are shaken and the ash pan cleaned. From the ash pit, the engine is moved to the inspection pits. Here, mechanics with years of experience, having taught them just where to look for possible trouble, go over, around, and under her, making a thorough examination of all parts. The inspection completed, the engine is moved to the coaling station for sand and coal. The sand box has a capacity of approximately 11 bushels, assuring ample sand for long runs. From the box, traps deliver sand to each individual driving wheel. Next, from the sand spout, the engine moves down to the coal chute, where the tender is filled to capacity. She moves to the engine washing platform, where the engine is washed off with hot water containing cleaning materials. At the same time, the tender is filled with water. Before making the next move, we must know what repairs, if any, are necessary. We find the engineer in the register room filling out his report, and the veteran inspector in the inspector's office filling out his. The engineer's report reflects the performance of the locomotive while in his charge. The inspector is responsible for detecting any defect that may escape the notice of the engineer. Finishing his report, the inspector places it in a cartridge and sends it by pneumatic tube to the roundhouse foreman. First, the engineer's report comes in. He has reported her okay. But that is not unusual. There are 11 of these engines in service. They are handled by 42 different engineers each day, and rarely are more than 2 or 3 items reported. The inspector, who is trained to find work, has only reported lubricate engine. With this information, the foreman gives instructions to turn the engine, but not to place it in the roundhouse. So, from the washing platform, the engine moves to the turntable. Just a few years ago, an engine, after completing a run of only 100 miles, was kept in a roundhouse from several to as many as 12 hours for necessary repairs before again being dispatched. And yet, here is the modern steam engine passing up the roundhouse after a round trip of 848 miles. She now leaves the turntable, headed for one of 2 engine service sheds, where she will get a complete and speedy lubrication. While she pauses at the opposite end, we look through the length of the service shed. The valve and engine oils are supplied this building from the oil house. These pumps lift the engine and valve oils from underground storage tanks and maintain a supply under constant pressure in the pipelines. Outside the oil house, the 2 oil lines are encased in a single conduit which carries a small steam tracer line to prevent congealing of the oils in cold weather. Extending to each of the engine service sheds, the lines branch out to the 4 hose stations on each side of the building. The stations are located so that any part of any class locomotive headed in either direction can be reached by the hose of one of the stations. Back of this shield are the pumps and piping, which handle 3 other lubricants from the shipping containers and feed them under pressure to the lubrication stations. A view of one of the stations shows the drop hose. Each has a different fitting for its particular lubricant. From left to right, there are valve oil, engine oil, star or soft grease, Marfac, a semi-fluid grease, air for hard grease rod cup lubricator, and gear or extreme pressure oil. Since all types of locomotives, conventional as well as roller bearing, are worked in this shed, a cabinet is provided for the storage of hard grease forms and rod cup grease. Minor repairs can be made to the locomotives while being lubricated. To expedite this work, a small quantity of material and necessary hand tools are kept available in this cabinet. The foreman is provided with a small enclosed office. Both a telephone and the pneumatic tube system are provided to afford ready communication with the roundhouse. Our engine moves in the shed and over the pit. As she stops, the hostler observes the time, 11:56, or 55 minutes since the engine arrived on the ash pit. The lubrication men take the hose carrying the proper lubricant for each of their individual requirements, and the job is started. This man is filling the valve oil mechanical lubricator. On the right side of the engine, a similar lubricator is being filled with engine oil. The 2 carry sufficient oil for a run of 1,300 miles. They deliver oil to 220 different points. Five bearings of the valve gear are lubricated with soft grease each dispatchment. The remaining bearings require lubrication only at 15-day intervals. To make the lubrication foolproof, the slip fittings are designed so that the bearing fitting will accommodate only the fitting of the pressure hose supplying the proper lubricant. The rod and crank pins, as well as the crosshead pins, are all roller bearing. They are lubricated with extreme pressure oil. The oil cavity in the bore of the pins has sufficient capacity for a run of 500 miles. While we have observed this side of the engine, the other side has been completed. air brake and final inspection made, all completed at 12:07. Only 11 minutes in the shed, and only 1 hour and 6 minutes since she arrived at the shop. 1 hour and 6 minutes servicing after a round trip of 848 miles. Moving to the outgoing track, ready for the next dispatchment. Later, the engine crew reports to man her for the next trip. Note the time, 12:45. Back in service after 1 hour and 44 minutes at her home maintenance point. These engines, with an assignment of approximately 15,000 miles per month, must be dispatched promptly. From Roanoke to Bristol, Virginia, handling the westbound Tennessean. The low initial investment, the low maintenance cost, the high availability, and the highly dependable performance of the streamlined passenger engine are shared by larger units, which also exemplify a high degree of adaptability and versatility. Now let's see what this modern, all-purpose, simple, articulated engine is capable of doing. First, she handles the merchandise freight train from Roanoke to Williamson, a distance of 200 miles over 2 heavy-grade districts. After quick servicing, she is dispatched handling a tonnage train of coal to Portsmouth, Ohio. Meeting her sister with 175 empty coal cars, we see her in the Ohio River Valley with her tonnage, a train of 13,000 tons moving along at 42 miles per hour. With roller bearings on all wheels, 300 pounds boiler pressure, and 70-inch drivers, she has available 6,300 horsepower at the drawbar. Leaving Portsmouth, she handles a 5,200-ton fast merchandise train to Columbus over a district of some favorable grade conditions, but with a ruling grade of 0.3% and 10 miles long. At Columbus, the end of her westward run, she stands for a mixed equipment train. Eastward with this train, the engine makes a through run of 410 miles to Roanoke. She is proving her versatility by being adaptable for any class of service. After the 820-mile round trip, she also passes up the roundhouse. Following the fire cleaning, inspection, sanding, coaling, watering, and washing, she enters the engine shed. Here the engine will get the same speedy servicing given the streamliner. The lubricators are filled as before. The valve gear bearings are similar to those on the streamliner and are lubricated in a like manner. Instead of high dynamic steel rods with roller bearings, this engine is equipped with carbon steel rods with conventional bronze bearings. Therefore, the old familiar pin grease is used as a lubricant. The rods are equipped with pressure fittings to take the pneumatically operated grease gun. The servicing is completed. She moves out of the engine shed to take her place with a streamliner, ready for their next road trips. They are pictures of low-cost motive power, cheap to operate and maintain, dependable in service with a high ratio of availability, versatile in ability to handle various types of trains, and all without heavy capital expenditures for terminal and roadway facilities. This is the modern coal-burning steam locomotive.